Hurricane Ernesto is nearing Bermuda. Good Friday evening. I'm Mike Naso with this 11 p.m. Friday night update on this hurricane, which is making a direct strike on the island of Bermuda. There's the satellite imagery. It has weakened down to a Category 1 hurricane, but is still a hurricane and causing some nasty impacts there directly over the island of Bermuda as it comes very close to a landfall over that tiny little island. Looking elsewhere, there's the front off the eastern seaboard of the United States, which means there's absolutely no way that Ernesto can come towards the United States, but there will be very high swells and seas and rip currents along the eastern seaboard of the United States. Now, Ernesto is impacting Bermuda at this time. Here's a look at a webcam from Bermuda, and let's listen in and see if we could hear the impacts of the hurricane. Very, very nasty. Here's the latest as of 11 p.m. Atlantic time, which is also Eastern time on Hurricane Ernesto. The center of the hurricane was at 31.4 north, 65.2 west, and that puts it very near Bermuda, about 60 miles or so away from the island, and it looks like it's going to cross very near or potentially right over the island. If it crosses directly over, that would be a quote-unquote landfall, but regardless, it's all but a direct hit. Winds are down now to 90 miles per hour, had been up at about 100, so it was a Category 2, now it's a Category 1, and it's moving north-northeast at 13. Again, it should accelerate over the weekend and then eventually move on out south of Atlantic Canada. But again, as I mentioned before, high swells will propagate away from the hurricane. The winds, as you saw on that webcam, are gusting, and the hurricane force winds are almost on the island. They did have a report of a wind gust to 74 miles per hour, which is hurricane force, at the airport there in Bermuda. Again, it looks like you're going to get the hurricane force winds potentially sustained, and they could be as high, like I showed, as 90 miles per hour. And then eventually it will move up and out. But nevertheless, a nasty hit for Bermuda. There's the radar up close, and again, the as of 11 p.m. Eastern time, the eye looks pretty chewed up here. It doesn't look very well organized. There's a lot of wind shear from the southwest, and I'll show you that in a second. But there is still some heavy weather, especially on the northeast side of the hurricane, and a lot of it's impacting Bermuda right now. A lot of people have mentioned on the internet that Bermuda, as they say, is like a fortress. It's really, really solid and prepared for hurricanes, and so with a Category 1 hurricane that is this ragged, there's a good chance they'll fare okay, but still, there's going to be those impacts. Here's the wind shear, and I mentioned 20 knots of wind shear, maybe more, just chewing right into the western edge of Ernesto, and that is very unfavorable for development. As a matter of fact, look at this image to give you some perspective. Here's North Carolina and the Outer Banks right there. There's Virginia to the north on this map because it's kind of hard to see. North Carolina, and then there is the island of Bermuda, and the heavy weather is headed right into it. But look at this surge of wind shear, and that's also pumping some drier air into the hurricane, and that's why it's kind of half a cane right now, as they would say, to where a lot of the weather is to the north and east on the right side of the storm, and not so much on the west side. However, sometimes the winds are strong even when the convection is lacking, especially if it starts to accelerate, so you'll have to be very, very careful. Don't think that the weaker side of the hurricane won't pack a punch, even though it's really the northeast side that's causing the problems. Convection blowing up right there over the island of Bermuda right now as it continues towards the north-northeast, the hurricane moving in that direction. Here's a longer loop from Brian McNulty's radar page. Notice how well defined the eye was and then how it opened up. That is a sign of a weakening hurricane. So it was a Category 2 hurricane, ragged, but still, a Category 2. Right at the beginning here, look at how the eye was closed off, very well defined, and then that shear gets to it and just ravages that south side. And now you have just this one band coming into Bermuda, what's left of the eye wall, or whatever you would consider to be an eye wall, with maximum sustained winds of 90. That means at any given point, you could have constant sustained winds up to 90 miles per hour with higher gusts. And like I said, they already had a gust to 74 at the airport there in Bermuda. The key messages for Hurricane Ernesto: number one, it should bring a prolonged period of strong winds and storm surge on Bermuda through Saturday night. Hurricane warning obviously in effect. Residents there should listen to orders from local officials. Number two, heavy rainfall expected to impact Bermuda, and there could be life-threatening flash flooding in low-lying areas of the island. And number three, as I mentioned at the beginning of the update, even though Ernesto is forecast to remain well offshore the U.S. East Coast, expect high swells. Beachgoers should be aware of significant risks of life-threatening surf and rip currents. Stay out of the water if advised by lifeguards. I would stay out of the water anyway until they subside. Surf and rip currents also possible in the Bahamas, Bermuda, and Atlantic Canada over the next few days as Hurricane Ernesto pulls away. So again, watching it there, it is a potent hurricane, but it never became a Category 3 major hurricane. It only got to a low-end Category 2, so we still have a long way to go in hurricane season 2024, but tonight and throughout Saturday, heavy impacts for the island of Bermuda from Hurricane Ernesto. I'm Mike Nasa with the latest on Hurricane Ernesto, and I will talk to you next time.